What is the Xbox expansion pass? I don't know. Oh, hello. Greetings. I am 343 Guilty Spark, monitor of Installation 04. Greetings to all of you reclaimers here on Xbox Expansion Pass. Xbox Expansion.
Welcome welcome all to episode 106 of the Xbox Expansion Pass, recorded on Sunday, October 31st, 2021. I am your host, Luke Lohr, the InsipidGhost. In this episode, I'm joined by Rand al Thor 19, the man with a million here to know the calm before the storm ahead of Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite. We'll take a look at that campaign overview for Halo Infinite that was shown ahead of the Xbox 20th anniversary, and it is sure to bring plenty of celebrations. We'll have our predictions for that and more in this episode. Enjoy. Yet another week of gaming is upon us and behind us. Welcome to XEP, discussing all things in the gamerverse as they pertain to the Xbox ecosystem. And as I want to do each and every week, I like to start the show by offering words of kindness to those who have made my gaming week better. And this week, the words of kindness go to a content creator I've watched for years, the man with a million, Mr. Rand al Thor. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me on, brother. It's finally exciting to get to talk to you. We haven't podcasted much together, I think one time. And so I'm finally on XCP, and I can't wait to talk about all the great things that you've put together for this Halloween Sunday.
It is a Halloween Sunday. We've had a lot of spooky game questions over the past month. It's been a blast, and I have thoroughly enjoyed kind of diving into them for sure. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to regale the listeners with how you got your moniker, the man with a million. I think that's the coolest story, and I love hearing it every time, and I hope you'll indulge me and tell it once more.
Sure, yeah. So during the 360 era, you could say I got obsessed with achievements, obviously. So I have a million gamer score, but the story is I ended up meeting through some of my friends the head of Xbox, Phil Spencer, in 2015. And we played Halo together, and we continued a friendship, and we would play a whole bunch of different games together. And one day when we were playing Halo 5 Legendary with Tim Dog and like Southbound and a couple other guys, Phil kind of casually said, "Man, wouldn't it be cool if you could come to E3 and break a million gamer score on my stage?" And everybody was like, "Oh my God." And I was like thinking to myself, "Oh man, that would be so cool," right? Like that's everything I would ever dream. And so he kind of said it, and I was kind of thinking like I would talk to Tim, and he'd be like, "Do you think you really meant it?" You know, kind of a going back and forth with myself. And he's like, "Well, why don't you just email him?" So I emailed Phil, and I was just kind of like, "Hey, you know, you mentioned this. Is that something you would like to do?" And he was like, "You know what? Yeah, like let me bring this up to my team, and we'll discuss it and see what happens." So about a couple weeks later, he got back to me and said the team loves the idea. I'm going to get you to put in touch with some people that are going to oversee this, but I can't wait to see this moment for you at on our stage. He's like, "It's not going to be on our stage, but it's going to be during an Inside Xbox episode." I'm like, "Cool, that's amazing." So, Luke, one of my dreams was to go to E3. And this was before they opened it up to fans where anybody could go.
Right.
And I think Xbox has just started like doing Fan Fest at E3, where the fans would get entry to E3. I think they started in 2015. So I was getting ready to break a million in 2016. And Phil was like, "Come to E3. You're going to have the badge. You're going to be able to go." And I got into Fan Fest, and that's how I was able to get in. So like one of my dreams was accomplished. Here I was at E3, the show floor, where, you know, these conferences I've always watched since, you know, every year, right? Like watching all my favorite journalists or whatever when they would talk about like Adam Sessler on the show floor, or Jeff Keighley when they'd be like at those little booths talking about the games. Like, that's what I want. I wanted to experience that one time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to go, and they had Xbox PR had prepped me to break it with Halo 5, and it was a really short segment where I just, those one of those short levels where it was like 2 minutes long. You just kind of walk
Sure.
to the end,
Yeah.
or the end of Ori, which, the end of Ori can be a little difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they said they wanted to do Halo, so I'm like, cool. So we go to the Inside Xbox recording where I would break it, and they're like, yeah, we want to do Ori, and in my mind I'm like, I'm not prepared for this. I'm not prepared. I prepared to just walk in Halo. I'm not prepared to actually do the end escape segment in Ori. And we did it. Took some time. Recorded it. Hit the million. And then later on, there was an interview with Phil where I got to quote unquote meet him for the first time, even though I'd met him the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like it was done. It was amazing. I was like the 5th person in the world to break it, and yeah, that's so like I started calling myself the man with the million in my videos, and it kind of stuck.
That's so cool, man. That's so cool. And then, it has stuck. Are you still, now, I think I know the answers to this, but are you still like chasing achievements, or is that phase of your life gone? Where do you stand on that now?
No, I don't go after achievements anymore. That it took a while to wean myself off of it, kind of like any addiction, really.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are games where I mean, I still look at all the achievement lists before I play a game, but there used to be that compulsion to actually get every achievement in any game I played, but now I just don't care
Yeah.
as much. So I get what I can get and I move on. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird cautionary tale because I definitely was addicted to getting achievements, and I would have to get every achievement in a game I played. And that took a while to actually break out of. Like I would feel a certain way about playing a game and not getting an achievement or all the achievements in it, but eventually with some time I just kind of overcame that, I guess. And
Sure.
now, playing Guardians of the Galaxy, before, playing Guardians of the Galaxy, I would have a collectible guide up if it
Gotcha.
had collectibles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you could maybe make the argument that it would ruin a playthrough where you're constantly always checking to see where the next collectible is.
Sure.
And I would do that for every game that had collectibles.
I have ruined a few good games by doing that exact thing, and I had to wean myself off of that practice, at least in some ways, for sure.
Yeah, so this time playing through Guardians, if I find the collectibles, great. If I don't, great. And it's no big deal if I don't get them all. If I don't get all the achievements, it's just, I don't know. I've been doing it for so long that it kind of became a part of who I was. That
Mm-hmm.
it just was. Yeah, it was difficult to wean myself off of. But yeah, I don't go for achievements anymore. There's so many of these indie games that come out that you can get really high gamer score in like 2 minutes that you can complete, but
Sure.
that's not me anymore, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. And for me, it's a matter of how much do I like the game and how fair is the achievement list? That's kind of where I've fallen down on, because I don't want that 2 minute, 1K. And I also don't want that, 5-year Gears of War, seriously 3.0, 10 gamer score type thing.
Yeah.
There's a balance somewhere in there for sure. I'm curious. I reviewed Guardians, and I had all the same complaints and celebrations that every other reviewer did. But when I had to give a numerical score for Season Gaming, I came in lower than a lot of other people, despite really liking the game. How are you enjoying it?
I haven't played it that much. I think I'm on maybe chapter 4 or 5.
Okay.
But from what I played so far, I quite like it. I will say one of the complaints I have is the combat isn't as engaging as I think it could be.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, like the way it looks, the story it's telling,
Mm-hmm.
I'm all in on that aspect. Like I think it's an incredible story that they're doing, and I did not expect the game to be this good.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of wish the combat was just a little bit better, as I'm not really just a fan of running around locked onto an enemy, holding right trigger as Star-Lord to just dump my ammo into an enemy.
Right.
And like maybe dodging and stuff. It's not the most engaging combat system I've ever played, but I really do like the game though.
I'm glad to hear that, because after sometimes when you play a game in isolation and then you take a step back from it, have a little bit of time, you reflect on how you truly feel about it sometime later. And I think you'll find that the combat gets better as you gain more abilities, and the trees are very easy to level up. But I've been thinking back to a lot of the game that I critiqued and things that I liked about it. And I think, like, mentally, I'm really high on a lot of it. And I think I also like these Guardians far better than their MCU counterparts, which I was not expecting to do. So we'll see how that lands.
Yeah, it was a little bit overwhelming to kind of get used to them when I'm so used to the Chris Pratt and the Dave
Hmm.
Bautista versions of
Right.
those characters.
Yeah.
So it was kind of weird at first. But yeah, the more I've gotten to play it, the more I actually do care for these characters.
I think it was Gamora and Drax that I, in hindsight, realized that I really like them a lot more than their MCU counterparts. And then from there, the rest grew on me. But it did take, a 20-hour game to do that. Whereas, in the film versions, you have what, 4 to 8, depending on if you include, the Avengers movies as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoy it and you round through it, because there's a lot of great gameplay in there, for sure, man. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, man, we've got a couple things to talk about on this list. The 20th anniversary of Xbox is fast approaching, and it feels like we're in a calm before the storm, so to speak. Forza and Halo are the two big guns that are kind of looming over the Xbox community. Not a lot of big Xbox news this past week, but we did get the much waited for campaign reveal for Halo Infinite, or re-reveal, I think is fair to say. We saw a new version of Craig. We saw some updated gameplay, some incredible visuals. I was really high on this unexpected campaign reveal that launched, by the way, right after I launched my episode of XEP. So I was sitting on that for a week, which was funny. What did you think of this gameplay reveal?
Yeah, I liked it for the most part. I it's a campaign overview, right?
Right.
So I know a lot of people were maybe expecting a epic trailer to kind of
Mm-hmm.
give you the sense of the story, but this wasn't that. This was kind of more like, these are the things kind of that you are going to be doing in the game in a quick 6-minute trailer. So some of the things that I kind of noticed were, the game looks much improved
Mm-hmm.
from when they showed it off in 2020, and that's clear as day.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I really dig the cinematic camera they're going with for this one. There's reports that they were kind of following God of War's 2018 God of War's one-shot camera,
Mm-hmm.
that it would kind of swirl around Chief and then go into his helmet when when the gameplay would start. And it definitely looks more cinematic in that regard than previous Halos. Um,
I saw
I
a GIF. I apologize for interrupting you, but I saw a GIF that was suggestive of that same camera as well. That it looked like it was making that exact angle to go right into his suit, and then it cut short just of that as well. I don't know
yeah,
if you saw the same one.
I did. I know. I think I know exactly which one. When he jumps out of the Pelican, lands on the
Mm-hmm.
ground, it looks like the camera going to be pulled right into his visor, and you be
Exactly.
playing. Yeah. I also really dig the equipment. I think the equipment that they're using, the grapple hook, the repulsor, the light shield, especially the grapple hook, grapple shot. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to change how people play Halo. We already know it changes the multiplayer in a great way. It makes it more fun. It makes it more enticing. Like, it's not just static where the enemy's coming at you straight down the hallway or whatever. Like, somebody could be getting an extreme angle on you because they have that pickup, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in the campaign, I'm thinking of like different ways to attack enemy fortifications, using the grapple hook to get into, quick angle to get somebody, or grapple right to somebody, as the trailer showed. Um, so I think the campaign is going to be a lot of fun. I'm interested in seeing the secrets of the story, like what happened to Cortana. As you know, she is quote unquote bad now after the ending of 5, which, spoilers, sorry if you haven't played a 6-year-old game at this point, right?
Right.
So I am wondering why she's missing, and why she has that purple color that she
Mm-hmm.
had in the very first Halo and doesn't look like she looked like in the last game. Um, and who is like the I think that the character at the end, the Forerunner, Harbinger of Truth or
Yep.
Harbinger of Pain, whatever they're called. Like, what is that all about? Are the flood in this? So there's definitely some cool secrets that hopefully we find out by playing it, which has me interested. But I will say, like, there are some questions and concerns that I do have. One being around how much of this game is Halo by Ubisoft, I guess, right?
Okay, so
Because
you're in the camp that you saw the map and you were a little trepidatious about it.
it's not that I saw the map, because obviously in an open world, a semi-open world game, you're going to have map and you're going to have side quests. That I was totally expecting. Like, yeah, it makes sense that Chief would go out and maybe save some Marines, right? Like, I expected that.
Sure.
It was just weird to see a stronghold or keep, as they called it, and be structured so much like Far Cry. And I love Far Cry. I'm someone that absolutely loves Far Cry. I think it's so much fun to play. The guns they give you and like it's like basically just a sandbox, and they're like, hey, go play this how you want to play it. I think it's a lot of fun, right? But I guess the formula has definitely worn itself down after all these iterations. So to see it in Halo, it's interesting, but also a little bit of a concern, because it's like how much of the time you're going to be spending playing the game is going to be taking over these strongholds or keeps or doing side content versus how much of it is going to be carefully curated story levels,
Right.
right?
Sure.
And so that's where my concern is. It's like, how many of these keeps are we going to, like, I guess it's basically is like how much of the gameplay time is going to be inflated because they expect you to do these side content. And that's my only real concern I have. Like, I can't wait to play the game and get into those keeps and kill all the brutes and covenants and upgrade. And then I didn't even mention the upgrades. Like, you can actually upgrade Master Chief, improve his grapple shot, improve everything that he's using. I think is cool. My concern, and it's just a concern. I mean, it could completely unfounded, but it's the one thing I did notice was that, like, okay, what's the is it going to be mostly side content in the world to extend the gameplay time instead of finishing like you can Halo 5 in 5 hours?
Sure.
Are they adding a whole bunch of stuff here in the open world to make sure that the game is 12 hours long and they don't really have a lot of single player story moment content? That's my concern. I don't know if you feel the same way.
I don't think I don't think I do, though. I share the concern. I don't think I weight it the same way. If that is to say that if the crit path is still available for players that want to do it in like a 5 to 8 hour run, I think that's absolutely fine, right? Like Halo has become very linear. Wherein if you go back to the Halo 1, far more open world esque, right, for the technology of the time. I don't have the nervousness about the map at the moment because I didn't see Far Cry or Witcher 3 level information on there. And I think having the pilot and the Pelican will likely move you from area to area, biome to biome. I saw as a lore buff, I was excited to see named enemies when he
Mm-hmm.
was going through. And I remind myself that Arkham Knight had checkpoints to clear very much like Far Cry, at least in premise, but in practice it still felt very Arkham. So I'm trying to use that as my counterpoint, I think, mentally, because it was still Arkham. It still had that Arkham Asylum gameplay through the course of that trilogy, but it kind of evolved. I will say that I am tired of the Ubisoft formula making its way to everything, with the caveat that when people play and buy Far Cry 6, they're doing just that because they want more Far Cry, and why wouldn't we want to give that to them? The question will be, will Halo fans take to it? They were in need of a reinvention, a reinvigoration. They were in need of something that somehow stayed Halo for the fans of old, but was new for the fans of what is to come, the younger fans. Rand, last night we had trick or treating a little bit early, and I was dressed as Master Chief, and a kid, and I'm so serious, this is not a joke, really said I was that guy from Fortnite, just like the meme. He really said that to me. He really said that, and I mean that's the meme. But I
How
was
did it
like, no,
feel?
man,
How
it
did it
hurts
feel?
so bad. It hurts so badly, and I, I couldn't believe it. And he was dead serious. I was like, nah, man, this is Master Chief, Halo. He's like, yeah, but he's in Fortnite too, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, I know him from Fortnite. And I was like, oh, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
cool.
I did see your pictures. You dressed as Master Chief, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
hilarious that some kid who doesn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
Obviously not old enough to experience Halo like we were. And he's
Right.
just like, "Yeah, you're the dude from Fortnite." That's hilarious. It's sad
It
when you think
hurts
about it
so
like
bad.
that, but then you understand the power that Fortnite has where you
Mm,
and why other companies would love to put their properties or IP in Fortnite
mm-hmm.
because you have this young audience that really doesn't have any sort of connection to a lot of these things that we do. So it's just funny that's it's like, we in Fortnite, and I can imagine you behind the mask being
Oh, man.
like you're just like, this is wrong. This is the meme come to life, and it's not like being said in a sarcastic way.
Right? That it really was the meme come to life. And it reminded me of the feeling I got when people said that, their first Star Wars was The Phantom Menace. And I'm like, what? Because I grew up on, the originals, New Hope, Empire, and Return. And so it was that same vibe. But to go back to bring the point back, somehow, some way, they have to find a way to appeal to both groups and get people in. And they're doing a lot of stuff on the multiplayer side. That multiplayer flight, I really enjoyed the
Mm.
2 flights that I played. There's a lot of good stuff there, and I think that made me all the more excited for the campaign overview that we saw, because to me it really did feel like a re-reveal, which is how I think of it. I mean, we saw Craig in a different way altogether, and with a funny little like verbal, and returning old friends, and then Chief went to work. There was a lot of stuff there that I think they've learned some lessons. 343 has, because I love 4 a lot. I really like 4's story. I like a lot of 4's gameplay. The enemies were a little boring. But the gameplay in 5 had a lot of evolutions that were really good, but it never felt Halo. They got to find a way to nail that, and
No, yeah,
this
you're
might be
right.
their way. This might be their way to do it.
How do you feel about the since you're a big Halo fan like I am?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about essentially this being the only Halo game we'll get for foreseeable future, the next 10 years? They said they have a 10-year plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Ah, man.
I know it makes sense from a business perspective. All the big games are free to play. The Fortnites, the Apex Legends, the War
Mm-hmm.
Zones, right? And it makes sense. Like, I understand it's a business at the end of the day, right? So Halo's this huge property. Of course, it's going to be free to play. And like it's a live service like literally every other multiplayer game.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get it from Microsoft's perspective. But as a fan, how does it make you feel?
Are you talking about multiplayer or campaign?
Well, I guess we'll go with the campaign. Since we're talking about the campaign, how does the 10-year plan for the campaign, like, are you worried at all that the campaign is going to be not have a true ending and it'll just be like, tune in a year from now for the continuing adventures of Master Chief on Zeta Halo. You
That's
know?
that is a great question, because they are challenged with now. They built this new engine. They went to work at what the core of Halo was, and they now have to seemingly wrap the Reclaimer saga, somehow handle a lot of story elements like the Return of the Flood from Halo Wars 2. Whatever, nobody played that, and don't pretend like you did, people. I love that game, but we all had to research who Atriox was. Not we, but I am curious how they're going to balance the Banished, how they're going to balance the Flood, how they're going to balance the Created. They have these new enemies, the Harbinger of Truth. They had the Didact was killed off in the comic books from Halo 4, and then there's a lot of story elements that 343 just hasn't quite landed. And in making a platform like Infinite, they have a delivery service to tell a lot of different stories. But that first one out the gate, the first one that we all play, when that thing launches into Game Pass and when people are paying $60 for it, when they're booting up their Xbox Ones to their Series X's, logging on the cloud, that campaign needs to be a complete experience. The player needs to traverse through however many hours, I would hope 8 or more, so that they feel like they're really there. And then it needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. No cliffhangers, no anything in that first one, so that players feel fulfilled. And then from there, they've got a lot of places they could go because of all those story elements I mentioned. There's a lot of stories that could be told, and they can also go about telling other stories that are not Master Chief relevant. But that now is not the time for those. Right now, as they said in the opening of that overview, it's always been about Chief and Cortana, and they need to tell a start to finish story first, And after they've landed that first one, Rand, I'll be feeling good because
Yeah.
I'm excited to find out. I don't think Atriox is going to be featuring heavily in this one. I
It
think he's our
almost seems
big
like
bad.
Atrax is dead, doesn't
I
it?
don't think he's dead. I don't think he's well. I've read Shadows of Reach, and he's still very much alive in that book. But there's some timeline jumps that this game has done ahead of a Halo Wars 2, ahead of Shadows of Reach, ahead of Halo 5 Guardians. I don't know. He's certainly Thanos in this one, and I don't think we see Thanos much here. But Cortana's oddly out of it. There's a lot of ways that they could take the story. And I mean, in the background, I mean, I forget which 343 employee confirmed it. There's a crashed Guardian. So perhaps the Banished have not only defeated the UNSC, but they've handled, Cortana's forces. There's a lot. There's a lot, man.
Yeah, I mean the reintroduction of the Flood, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they do that, but that's the other thing is like, is the reintroduction of a Flood something that will happen at the end? That's what I'm no, I wouldn't say concerned because Halo Infinite's my most anticipated game. It's been this whole year. I
Right.
have been waiting with bated breath to play it. In the multiplayer, we've all played it, right? It's amazing. Like 343 has recaptured what made Halo Halo while also bringing it to the modern times, right?
Right.
The campaign was always the question mark for me because I'm of the opinion 4 was really good and 5 was just not good at all.
Right.
So I was kind of like, okay, and how is that going to fit in working on this big open world that they want to do? But then
Mm-hmm.
also as a platform, like what stories can you tell? Because I would assume it's not just going to be here's the story and that's all you're getting for the next 10 years.
Right.
So my concern was, okay, are we actually going to have a proper beginning, middle, and end to this whatever story they're trying to tell, and then somehow maybe have a hook for season 2 or whatever for the
Mm-hmm.
continuing adventures of Master Chief? Like,
Do they?
is the Flood coming back at the end? At the very, very end, like say you beat whoever is the big baddie here and you find out what happened with the Cortana and you're putting all these things together and then the Flood make their reappearance and that's
Right.
where it ends. And the next time you're playing a year, 2 years from now, the Flood are going to be there. Like, how would you feel if that was the case?
I'd be fine with that because in recent years, we've seen this done successfully with the MCU's version. Like they had Thanos at the end of the first Avengers, but they beat their big bad in Loki, right? And that made sense to me. With Halo, they've seen with Sea of Thieves that they need, in order to get content rolling for a big platform style game, they need 3, 4, even 5 teams simultaneously working in cadence with a release schedule. I think they might try to mimic something like that. And so I'm fine if the next campaign is a year out, but because it literally does say campaigns under the Infinite platform on, I believe it's Waypoint. Ainsley was telling me about it and so he was saying it's campaigns plural. I'm fine with that. I'm also fine if they deviate from Chief here and there, ODST style, Fireteam Raven style, doing some things like Halo Reach is one of the best Halo games ever made, and that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really feature Chief at all, save for a little cameo. And so I am fine if they deviate from that, but this first story out the gate has to be complete. And I'm fine if they tease, more to come as long as the story wraps up.
Right.
As long as that story wraps, I'll be happy. But if they try to put me on an edge like they did with Spartan Ops, which I like the idea of Spartan Ops, it just didn't execute at the time, and they tell a story that is bloated and incomplete, and then it's like stand by for season 2 or whatnot, I will then be upset. That would be different. That would frustrate me.
Yeah. One of the things that I am happy about, I don't know if you are, but it definitely seems like there are no more Forerunner enemies because I hated fighting those in 4 and 5.
Yeah, they have some of the coolest weapons,
They
uh, but-
do.
and they have some really neat designs. But then when you fight them en masse, it's very boring.
Oh, the
They were not
Prometheans, right?
fun.
The Promethean enemies.
Prometheans, yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, they were not fun to fight, which is a shame. And then in 5 they made some mistakes. Halo has always struggled with boss fights. There've been very few Halo games that have bosses, and the Warden Eternal in Halo 5 really let down in a lot of ways. And I'm curious to know with these named enemies that they kind of showcased briefly, how they're going to handle boss fights. Are they going to take the Doom Eternal approach where you're fighting God, I forget which one it was, but it's that big Slayer that made everybody frustrated. Uh, the Spartan killers in Halo look kind of like a Doom enemy in some ways. I'm really curious to know how that's going to play out, because if I feel like I'm fighting mini bosses, that's sweet as long as it elevates to something. And then what am I doing? Am I doing an escape run off an exploding platform, like the old Halos? Am I fighting a big bad like in Halo 5? I just don't know how they'll handle it. But I will say the year break does fill me with some hope. The game certainly seems to have improved a lot visually, which it needed to be a showcase. The gameplay felt sublime in those multiplayer flights, which puts a lot of my worry to ease and to bed. And the other part is Halo does need to be big, Rand, but Xbox and Halo used to be fully hand in hand. I think the studios are moving in a direction where there's going to be enough under the Xbox umbrella that if Halo doesn't land or it has an off year or something, everything's going to be okay. At least
Yeah,
that's my
no,
thought.
no. I
Because
mean,
there's
everything will be okay if even if Halo doesn't do well. I mean, Forza Horizon 5 is coming out really soon, and we all think it's going to be a great game because Playground Games doesn't know how to make a bad game, right? So,
not yet, that's for
you know,
sure.
and they have the Bethesda in the waiting. And you're right. And this probably would be a more bigger thing if Xbox still had the 5 studios they had most of
Right.
last gen, where like everybody's waiting for Halo and it comes out and it doesn't, and you're like, oh my god, well, what's left? Well, what's next is like all these other games. You have
Mm-hmm.
Jez Corden out here talking about Project Shaolin and Project Belfry and Wu-Tang games and all these different things. And it's just like, this is something, that as Xbox fans, we all wanted. We all wanted more games. We all wanted, big games, like really good games. And it definitely seems that Microsoft recognizes that and they're building more. So you're right. So if like Halo comes out and it's just okay, it definitely won't torpedo the brand or anything like that because there's still more to offer. However, I still feel like I still want Microsoft to take that next step where I don't want to think it's okay for them just to put out an okay or mediocre release. Like I want great games, and I know you want great games, and I
Yeah.
think that's how Xbox, because when you look at the perception people have, and as we know, perception can be reality. Like go back to 2013, DRM, all that stuff, and then even though Microsoft got rid of it, a lot of people still believed that they had it, right? And it was
Right.
perceived to be the lesser console. And right now, there's that perception that Xbox has no games or Xbox can't make great games. And the only way to really fight that narrative is to actually release high quality games, which they've done this year, Luke. They
Yeah.
have. Like, you look at Psychonauts 2, Game of the Year contender, right? 88 on Metacritic. Deathloop, an Xbox game, was the last PlayStation exclusive release. That game wowed critics.
Yeah.
Probably will be a Game of the Year nominee. Microsoft Flight Sim came over. 90 on Metacritic. People love it, right?
Yeah.
Forza Horizon 5, maybe going to be a 90 Metacritic game as well. Like,
It's looking
and then you
good.
have Halo. So, like, they are making those steps. And then you look to next year Redfall, Forza Motorsport, Starfield. And you can be like, okay. And then 2023, Hellblade, your Avoweds, Perfect Darks. And you can see the future.
Mm-hmm.
It looks so good. But I still think that Microsoft needs to, like, Halo is that linchpin that, like, a lot of people will look at Psychonauts 2 and they'll be like, well, that's a game of the year contender, but it doesn't capture the imagination or have that mainstream appeal that something like Halo does.
Sure.
Halo will be everywhere.
Yep.
And I don't know about you, I am sick of people saying Xbox has no games or has no good games. So to me, I feel like it's imperative that Xbox shut that narrative down by releasing high quality exclusives on Xbox, Game Pass, all that stuff. So while I agree with you that if Halo Infinite doesn't hit, it's not, apocalypse for the brand,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think it would go a long way to putting that perception and those memes down if Halo Infinite was a return to form, the return of the king, reviewed
Certainly.
well, people loved it. And I think perception around Xbox would maybe even change overnight.
Well, there's a lot going in its favor, and our mutual friend Lord Cognito often says it takes just one
Mm-hmm.
before that narrative goes away, that one banger, that one hit, that one Metacritic landed exclusive. And it's quite possible that Halo Infinite is that, at least based on the gameplay and the previews. It's quite possible that it is. And we know a lot of things come together late for a lot of studios around. I mean, God of War came in hot and then multiple delays, but then when it landed big. Forza Horizon is a proven commodity. And so I don't think no matter how good it is, it's going to change people's minds because it's the fifth Forza Horizon, you know? We have to give them due credit for the, in the Xbox has no games narrative. We got to give them due credit for the way that they've handled their acquisition of Bethesda, the way they've handled PC launches and ongoing games like Sea of Thieves, Master Chief Collection. They've poured support into those and the numbers support it. But you're right. It's going to take that one big one to really uh, shut people down. They do need to have Halo deliver. They need to continue to push back on that narrative of Xbox has no games. They've done it for everyone in the know. It's the people that don't know. It's the people that don't listen to shows like this. It's the people that don't do anything other than have a conversation with their friends or check social media from time to time by Call of Duty once or twice a year. And it will take something dismantling the Fortnites, the War Zones, the Apexes to do so. And that very well could be Halo this time. And that's an optimism that I do not have out of, my nature as a fan. The game was really that good. Call of Duty's on the decline. Vanguard's having a lot of struggles. Activision's having a lot of struggles. Battlefield's not looking strong to launch. And Fortnite's numbers are in decline. Apex, I think, is pretty stagnant. So there's a chance that Halo really could come in here and turn some heads. And not to mention, it's available in more places than any Halo game ever has before. PC, cloud, and console. Multiple SKUs of consoles at that. There's a chance. There's a chance. But to all the titles you listed for the future as well, the Xbox has no games narrative is quietly subsiding. And when it loudly does with that one big hit, it's going to be a huge momentum shift to go on to what's already snowballing quite well.
Indeed, yeah. It's finally. I mean, it took a while. Like Phil had to basically turn around a gigantic ship. We all know
Yeah.
like that takes forever, and it was hard to do with just 5 studios. Now they have 23, and it seems like every week, whether it's Jez Corden or Jeff Grubb, VentureBeat, like they're finding new games that our Xbox is working on, and who knows what others. We don't even know what Compulsion's making. Um, or like what that new game from the Coalition is that isn't Gears or coming before Gears 5. It's like, man, the future looks so good. But like right now, it's like I'm focused on Halo, and
Sure.
like being such a Halo fan as I am, like I wanted it to return. I wanted it to, like you're sitting there and it's just like, oh, imagine if Halo was 343. It's like you killed it with the single player in 4, you killed it with the multiplayer in 5. Like, let's put it together this one time and actually have a killer campaign and an amazing multiplayer
Yeah.
and just be the return of the king that everybody wants, especially in a year like you mentioned. Not a lot of hype around Call of Duty Vanguard.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, this is probably I can't imagine. I can't remember a year where people were this down on a new Call of Duty, and then even still, Battlefield as well, new Battlefield. But even some of the enthusiasm around that is a little bit tempered. I thought like when they originally revealed it, it's like, oh, that's going to be a competitor. But then people played and it's like, I'm like, could this be the actual like the opening that Halo needs to regain its footing? It'd be definitely interesting. What do you think about Dr. Disrespect's comments about it not doing well if there's no battle royale in the multiplayer?
I think that's spoken by a content creator who made his name in battle royales and makes
Mm.
his name in competitive style multiplayer. And I think that feeds into a lot of it. His content is dependent upon that stuff. And if Call of Duty is in decline, if kind of the other stuff that he makes his name on are in decline, he needs to make a bump for himself in the Halo space. Now, specific to Halo and Battle Royale, I think Halo could have an incredible Battle Royale. I think there are so many options for ODST dropping into an area and different weapons coming in, calling in different power weapons and vehicles being available. There's a lot they could do with that. Do you fight in teams? Do you fight in duos, solos? There's a lot of really cool Halo-esque options built into the gameplay styles, built into the lore with a lot of the Spartan trainings they used to do in the books. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff, but does Halo need that? No, I don't think Halo needs that to survive. I think that certainly couldn't hurt, and there's no reason to to avoid battle royale. Like some people have this diehard, it does or it does not, and I'm like, shoot, if it makes Halo something that people want to play more of, I'm there for it. I'm happy to do it. I enjoyed Call of Duty Warzone for a little while, and then I moved on because it didn't stick with me. But I was glad it was a thing, and Warzone certainly proving well to do well for Call of Duty as a franchise. But Battlefield tried it with Firestorm, and it bombed. It did not land.
Yeah,
So
and I'm a huge battle royale fan. Like I played Apex Legends for 100 hours. I played Warzone for like 200. My most played game of last gen is PUBG. I put 900 hours into that. And I have some really good memories playing with my guys. And I want Halo to be a battle royale. As someone who enjoys battle royale, I would love for Halo Infinite to have a mode. I understand like it doesn't necessarily need to be there at launch. Like let them focus on, oh, we need to make sure 4v4 is great and plays good and big team battles great.
right.
But as they've said, it's a 10-year platform. So is
I
it
mean, you got to see it at
possible
some point.
you get a battle royale a year from now, 2 years from now to kind of re-engage the audience? I think I could totally see that happening.
So
But
could I. So could I.
yeah,
And they have to have the Sea of Thieves approach of like 3, 4, 5 teams working on stuff, right? We it didn't if memory serves, the Master Chief Collection group has faded out. Like they're on their last season of content to shift to work on Infinite. Am I correct in saying that? Do you remember hearing something like that?
I think so, although I'm not 100% sure on that.
Well, nonetheless, if they've got a team working on uh, the next campaign, a team working on for the campaign after that, a team working on current multiplayer stuff, next multiplayer stuff, keeping all of this stuff in sync, checking out new modes for multiplayer. If they truly want Halo to be a thing and a platform, then they need to go all out. And it seems like they're doing that with Infinite as opposed rather to the previous strategy, which was create Halo 5, create the Spartan Ops, Spartan Strike, Fireteam Raven, and the stuff that's around it, Halo Wars 2. It seems like they're going all in on Infinite, land that shot, you know, deliver on that one, and then from there build outwards. It feels like they're going inwards as opposed to outwards with it. Um, I would love to see a Halo Battle Royale. I really would. I would play the mess out of it. I just, as long as the focus is on maintaining what Halo is at its core, and I really feel like they've done that. When I played those multiplayer flights, I should say, that felt like Halo, and it also felt modern, and that was sweet. And then when I
Yes.
saw this overview, I was there for it, man. Like watching that wasp drop in and flying over this huge area, I was still into it. And I mean, basically, it sounds like what we're going to be doing is going and clearing anti-aircraft stuff so your Pelican can get through, and that's how you're going to clear checkpoints. There's upgrade stuff there. If they stick the landing, it's going to be special. And if it misses, books are going to be written about this launch and what they did with this year delay and how other companies, third party, Call of Duty, Battlefield, etc., didn't delay things when they should have. Books will be written about it. Schreier's going to be drafting something right now, or it'll be on a no clip documentary or something like that. And I'm very curious to know if the move paid off. But all inclinations for me say it has, and it's looking good. I don't know.
When do you think we'll actually see a trailer? Like that was an overview, like a trailer. Do you think we get it at the 20th anniversary?
That's what I've heard from other people who say they know. You and I had a funny conversation about insiders, but the people that's what I'm seeing circulate, right? I know nothing special. I don't know any deep things, but it would make sense. It would make sense because they're launching a lot of the celebratory Series X's and controllers and things like that. It would make sense that you would have that because it's meant to look back on the legacy of Xbox, and what's more legacy than Halo. And maybe they show some new things for Infinite there, a new trailer, get people hyped. And then ahead of that December 8th release, which, I mean, that had to be a tough choice too, to delay all the way into December, put themselves out of contention for a game of the year or spotlight somehow. They really must have needed the time, but everything we've seen is that time is paying off. I think you have to see it at the 20th anniversary. How could it not be then?
Right. I
How could it
mean,
not be?
20th anniversary is Xbox and Halo, right? So
Yeah,
I would hope so.
I would.
I definitely want to see a really cool like trailer, epic trailer of like what you're gonna be going through in the campaign. Like I want to see that. So I'm crossing my fingers and hope that we get it during the 20th anniversary.
And the timing lines up because we got this overview last week. Forza coverage removes from embargo fairly close to its launch, but then you have to think they wanted to clear the way so that Forza could have the occupying of media, right? Media sites would be covering Forza Horizon's launch, have the early weeks of November, and then around the 20th anniversary allow it to transition into all the Halo stuff they've got coming up. And I would expect they've got a lot of stuff coming up. They've had an extra year to prepare, an extra year of marketing, extra year of, combination events, different types of crossovers, things like that. I'm expecting that we see Halo branded everything from here on out, starting kind of in that second week of November after Forza Horizon launches.
Yeah, I agree. When you mentioned Jason Schreier and the article, that is definitely something I would want to read. What happened last year? To be on the fly in the wall in those meetings where they're like, do we delay this? How long do we delay it for? Do we split multiplayer from single player? Because they had those discussions. And to hear about maybe what went wrong with the development and how the pandemic affected work from home at 3. That is a story that I would love to hear.
I want to hear that, and I really would love candid thoughts from Joseph Staten because he's such a well-spoken creator, and he's a proven developer, proven writer. He's proven. I mean, they brought him in to fix Crackdown 3 so that game could at least launch, right?
There's no fixing Crackdown 3, unfortunately.
But he was there because the thing couldn't even be launched, right? Also, I always forget his name, but it was Staten and the guy who now works heading up Flight Sim. Those two basically were brought in to make Crackdown come out. But I want to know what Joseph Staten, what decisions did he make? Did he have to say, all right, this is not happening. This is happening. This is not Halo. This is not, for them to remove co-op and say it's not happening right now. Forge, not happening right now. They had to make tough choices. And then they had to be in a room after last year's reveal and say, all right, what's not good enough? What is the core of Halo? How do we make it happen? Man, I want to know all that stuff. That is a dream of mine, to sit down and just talk to Staten and those involved and just say, where'd it go wrong? Where was your mistake as a company, 343? And how did you rectify it? If they stick the landing, that'll be a great story to tell.
Yeah, it sure would be. I'd love to read it.
Me too. Well, let's move away from Halo before we get you out of here. Age of Empires 4 launched into Game Pass for PC. This is a big success, I think, for Xbox, I suppose, but it's the PC space, so maybe it's not as relevant to the console users. But you mentioned earlier Deathloop, you mentioned Psychonauts 2. This is another win to add on to the category for Microsoft or Xbox game publishing. Pretty cool to see people taking to that and doing well.
No, it is. And, it's interesting because when I was going over the games in my head earlier about the games that Xbox released and done well, Age of Empires slipped, right? Because I don't think of it as an Xbox game because I'm not a PC guy. So when I think of games I can play on my PC, Age of Empires 4 isn't one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an issue I do have where Microsoft is all about play the games you want to play with the people you want to play with on the device you want to play. And they do a really good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
However, it always does seem like with Age of Empires 4 and Flight Sim that sometimes they don't necessarily follow their own guidelines. To me, if you're about the ecosystem is the utmost and all of our games are everywhere, then why isn't Age of Empires 4 on console? Right?
Right.
I understand it's a PC franchise. We need to launch it there first, and mouse and keyboard, which I think Halo Wars 2 didn't do as well because a lot of the hardcore PC people were like, this was made for controller, and that wasn't good. So, or even Gears Tactics when it launched on PC first, even though it had controller support. So these are kind of the experience. It's weird. I'm a huge Xbox fan, but I'm a console guy,
Mm-hmm.
and when I think about the games that come out, I didn't even think Gears Tactics or Age or Microsoft Flight Sim because they weren't on my preferred device of playing.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope, and I don't know what the solution here is. Do you delay the release of the PC game of Age of Empires 4 until the controller version's ready, the console version, and release them at the same time. But that is kind of like a glaring omission to me, where Microsoft is all about all of our games are everywhere at the day of release, except for these PC games. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
It's a good point. I don't think it bothered me because Flight Sim and Tactics and now Age of Empires, those all feel like PC games, not Xbox games. And your point is well taken about the controller support and when they should be launching. I think over time that will go away, but I think they also have a very awkward position in that they have to find a way to continue to flesh out and pad out that Game Pass for PC crowd that I don't have a lot of I don't have a lot of knowledge about PC games. That is not my realm. But now Xbox has this umbrella that is meant to encompass all of it. So I think it's going to be a timed thing. It's going to take time for it to change. But your point is well taken. I had not thought about the fact that so many of these games, I was thinking from the angle, they launch on the console eventually. What's the big deal? But to your mindset, well, they're launching when and where you want to play, but it's only on PC first, and that's a very different approach to it, and hard not to think of it that way when you put it in those terms. It's a good point. It's a very good point. Rand.
Sorry about that. My dog is going crazy because the trick or treaters upstairs. So my mic was muted. So I'm sorry.
You're good. No, I have trick or treaters starting to move about my neighborhood as well. Why don't we move on real quick? And I just want to ask, with this kind of calm before the storm that will be Forza, the 20th anniversary, and Halo, is there anything that you're looking forward to beyond Halo and Forza that you are really excited to play down the line?
Just in general, or from
Sure.
Xbox, or
Anywhere you like. Before we get to listener mail, I thought it'd be fun to just look ahead. What is it? I'm looking
Man.
to Gotham Knights. That's my jam. That's
Oh,
what I'm looking for.
dude, Gotham. I'm a big Batman fan. So Gotham Knights and even Suicide Squad. Like, I love Rocksteady,
Mm-hmm.
and like Suicide Squad looks cool, but like I don't know what that game really is going to be. It definitely seems the last trailer they did looked really good, but it was a story trailer.
Sure. Yep.
But I want to know the gameplay because in that first teaser they all had guns.
Yeah.
And it was like, is this game going to be a game where it's 4-player cooperative, like Back for Blood ish? Not saying like it's like a Left 4 Dead thing, but like, is Rocksteady going from this carefully constructed melee combat system to a gigantic open world where you're going around with King Shark and Harley Quinn with shotguns and chain guns? You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Exactly.
there's some question marks there for me, even though like I'll be there day one. So I'm really looking forward to. I know this is a Xbox podcast. Uh, my number one most anticipated game of next year is God of War.
Nice.
Because I think God of War 2018 is. I make this joke all the time because people will be like, "It's the best game of last gen," but I'm like, it's not even the best game that came of its year because I thought Red Dead Redemption 2 was my game of the year 2018.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no Red Dead Redemption 3. There's no Grand Theft Auto 6 next year. So for me, I'm really looking forward to God of War. I think it's going to be incredible. But on the Xbox side, I really love Arcane. I thought Deathloop was really good. I've loved Dishonored. I love Prey. So to me, when Microsoft acquired Bethesda, the crown jewel in it for me wasn't, you know, Bethesda Studios with Starfield or Elder Scrolls or id Software, even though I love Doom and Doom Eternal.
Mm-hmm.
Crown jewel for me was, I'm gonna get to play some crazy ass Arcane games because they're an amazing studio. So I'm really looking forward to Redfall.
That's
And I
cool.
know people are like a little down on it because they don't know what to expect from that CGI trailer. They're like, oh, it's Left 4 Dead with zombies. And then those leaked screens of a playtest came out and like, oh, it looks bad, even though it's like, well, yeah, have you ever played a game a year before release? It doesn't look the greatest. But just the pedigree behind the studio just makes me want to play whatever they release. So I'm really looking forward to Redfall. And honestly, I'm also kind of very interested in Saints Row.
Really?
I love Saints Row the franchise. Um, and I know there's a lot of debate about what the game looks like now and stuff. It doesn't matter. Like, I want the Saints to be back. They're back. I can't wait to play it. And there's definitely a lot of games coming out in February where some of these are going to have to get delayed, right? So,
Right.
um, yeah, like Starfield, I'm sure I'll definitely like want to play it, but um, I don't know. I've never been the one to kind of like go crazy over Todd Howard's games. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of Fallout, although I do really enjoy Elder Scrolls. So, but maybe Starfield with the sci-fi setting will catch my imagination in the ways the other ones don't. But we don't know what's really coming out towards the end of next year, as much as we do what's coming out in the early of 2022. So yeah, those would be my picks for right now. God of War #1 by far, and then Redfall, and stuff like that. So what are yours?
It's Gotham Knights and God of War are the two that stand strong. God of War for me is the best game ever made, and so I'm very excited to see what Ragnarok brings. And Gotham Knights, the Arkham franchise, has been my favorite gaming franchise of all, and that's saying something because I mean my room is covered in Halo right now. So I'm really excited to see what Gotham does. I know it's not Arkham, but it's meant to have that gameplay loop, and then Suicide Squad. I'm an avid Avengers player, which
Yes,
means
you are.
I'm
I see you. I see you on Twitter, extolling the virtues of Avengers. I give you praise and applause for continuing to talk about a game that nobody else cares about, but we all got
me
that game. So
me and six others are loving that one for sure. But I think that makes me cautious about Suicide Squad because there's a lot of the same critiques in the idea of it, right? Like you're a team, you're going out, you might be fighting robots. I don't know, we'll see. And my love of Avengers is one that I'm well aware is not. It's that game for me. I don't know. I can't explain it. Yeah. So that's it for me. It's Gotham Knights and it's God of War. Those are the two that I'm most looking forward to, without a doubt, for next year. Without a doubt, for
does
sure.
the Gotham Knights, with it being kind of more co-op focused and numbers popping off of people, does that concern you a little bit
Yes,
that it'll go away from what made Arkham so special?
it does concern me. It does not concern me enough to be shying away from it. I love Batman. I've loved Batman for a long time. The comics, the movies, the animated stuff, everything. I love versions of that world, and the Court of Owls has me just very excited to see what happens. And it concerns me, but in the same way that like I'm worried about how does Halo Infinite work in open world. I couldn't be more excited. I am curious. I'm wondering, but I do not think it's going to be bad. So that's where I'm at on that one.
I do have another question about Gotham Knights because it is something I've been thinking about. With you being able to play as 4 people, you can play
Mm-hmm.
as Batgirl, Robin, who I think is the Tim Drake version,
Mm-hmm.
um, Nightwing, and Red Hood.
Yep.
Is there going to be some FOMO when you pick a character and you beat the game, say as Red Hood? Like you're missing out on some things if you didn't play through it as Nightwing?
I do not know. I think they're going to try and encourage replayability like that. I also have heard that they're going to be trying to do some kind of movement where you can transition between characters pretty
Mm.
easily. If that's the case, then I'm down. Like I'm fine with it. I know Nightwing is the one that I'm most excited to play with. My buddy Joe is all about Batgirl. I know some people that are just dying to play as Jason Todd. And then Tim Drake's Robin is really cool. So I'm very curious. I also if they allow you to transition kind of Grand Theft Auto style where it's a button press and then you're moving into another character quickly, I don't think you'll have that FOMO. But if it's completely different stories and you're locked out of one from the other, I'd be very, I think, frustrated. So it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that for sure. Like again, it's concern, but it's not doubt, if that makes sense.
Right. No, yeah. Because I was just kind of like, well, what if I'm playing as Batgirl, but something really cool happens as Red Todd, and that person who's playing or Red Todd, Red Hood,
Mm-hmm.
has a much better experience, and my experience isn't as good because the character I picked just doesn't have the same moments. That was something I was thinking of because when I was thinking like who I want to play as, I was just like, well, I don't know because it's like you have 4 characters here that are all great in their own right, but what if I pick the wrong one and I don't have as good of a time with Robin as I could have had with Nightwing? You know what
Right.
I mean? So
I
it's
know
like,
exactly what you mean.
so I kind of sit there and I think like, well, I almost kind of wish it was just a Batman game, or if it was just one character again, like we're playing as Nightwing and we're going to experience the story. So at least I know everybody's other experiences are going to be the same as mine. Whether like I picked Robin, but he's the weakest of the characters, and I don't like his move set. But I've already played for 10 hours. I'm invested in it already. The game would have been much better if I played Red Hood. Like that is something I'm thinking about, and I'm kind of worried about choosing one of the 4. But I hope it's kind of like what you said, where you can kind of
Transition.
GTA it and maybe play as different characters.
Right.
I hope that's the way it is.
I do too. I do too. And we just don't know enough, but I'm all eyes forward on it for sure. That's, I mean, I'm hopeful. And for a lot of this stuff, I think we would have found out far more had kind of the pandemic development cycles not extended and whatnot, because I was expecting more from DC fandom. I saw a lot of stuff I loved, but I was expecting more from it. So, I mean, those are questions that remain needing to be answered. And short term, we've got a lot to play, but long term and the scheduling and whatnot, I'm curious what holds where,
I agree. Yeah.
So let me get 1 or 2 listener questions, because a lot of people wrote in and they all want to hear from Mr. Rand al Thor. That's for sure. And then I know we've both got trick-or-treaters in and around us. This one comes from Dano. He says, in jest, he says, can you ask Rand how it feels to be co-host on Jez's podcast? Oh, no. Oh,
Yeah,
no.
that's kind of a running joke we
Yeah.
have on the Xbox too, where basically it's Jez's show and I'm just Randall Chop Liver.
If he wakes up, there have been plenty of times where he's slept through the opening and you've been waiting around for him. I've gotten a few chuckles out of the Xbox 2 for that reason.
Yeah, but usually, Jez will break some stories on the
Mhm.
show. Like we talked a lot about I know we're not talking about this episode, but Project Shaolin and Project Belfry, and Jez had broke Project Typhoon, which became Contraband, and he was the one who
Mhm.
broke Project Dragon, which is the RPG MMO-ish game from Ion Interactive, right?
Mhm.
And usually people will source the podcast. And they always say Jez Corden's Xbox 2 with no mention of me at all, which isn't a big deal. I'm not looking for any sort of fame or spotlight. It's just a funny thing because it's so true. It's like Jez Corden, he is authority because he's Windows Central, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And who is Rand al Thor other than some just lowly YouTuber? You know how YouTubers are. We clickbait every title. We put ridiculous thumbnails out there, and we say whatever we want because we have no integrity, right? So it's like, so it's that joke of it's Jez's show, and I'm just there. I'm just a
Right.
dude, So
Right.
yeah, it's
There are a few Xbox insiders, Rand. Jez is certainly one of them, and not a lowly YouTuber. Those exist. I think we talked about that earlier or prior to recording. Man, the ones that will latch on to like a pause for Jez to get a sip of water, and they'll be like, "He paused, it's on," and then it's the full thumbnail. Oh man, those are the ones that crack me up. Let's see here. Other stuff that we should ask. Boozy the Clown, terrifying name. Best game you've ever played? I said it was God of War for me, for sure. What's the best game you've ever played?
ever played like ever
Mhm.
ever
Ever.
I mean, last gen Xbox One gen Red Dead Redemption 2 is my favorite by far. um Arthur Clarke just nailed, or I forget the name of the actor now, but Arthur Morgan, whoever did the voice for him, just killed me. Like it was so good. I love that game so much, and I wasn't really excited for Red Dead Redemption 2 because I'm like, who cares? It's a prequel. But I love that game so much. Um, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, I adored. It's probably my favorite Xbox game of last gen. And then like I look at 360, something like BioShock 1 when I played it the first time just overwhelmed me with, because I had played it a week before reviews were out, because I if you remember, Kmart sold it early accidentally, and
I
I was able
do.
to get an early copy. So I was playing the game before reviews were out, so I didn't know how good or how bad it would be, and it was the most incredible, one of the most incredible experiences I ever had. And then the twist happened, and I didn't know there was going to be a twist because like I said, no reviews were out. So that game just literally stunned me. It was one of the best pure gaming experiences I've ever had. Right.
That's cool. That's cool.
So yeah, like it's tough for me to like pick an overall favorite, but if I had to, I would probably say Final Fantasy VII, the original.
Cool. Nice. They need that remake to make its way to Xbox. I think a lot of people would re-dive into Final Fantasy.
I love Final Fantasy VII. I've played it like 6 times. It's one of the reasons I got a PlayStation in the first place. So it would be that Halo 2, the multiplayer, like that consumed my life for a year. So there's definitely games out there, but if I had to pick one, it would probably just be Final Fantasy VII. But I have different games for different generations, so.
Certainly. Well, that's awesome, man. Rand al Thor 19, the man with the million, host of the Xbox 2. It's his show, everyone, for sure.
Yeah, it's my show, not Jez's.
Thank you for joining me, man. This was an absolute pleasure. It was far too long in arriving, and it has made my day to have you here. Please tell people where they can find your content, what they can look forward to with your content, and of course, plug all the socials.
Oh, well, thank you, Luke, for having me on. It was an awesome time chatting for you for what short amount of time, like only an hour. I'm used to podcasts going 2 to 3, and we could probably podcast for 2 to 3 if we wanted to. We talk about everything. But yeah, I mean, I do my YouTube channel is youtube.com/Rand al Thor 19. I try to make minimum 1 video a week, 2 videos depending on what's going out, and I'll make as many as like whatever there is to talk about. But every week we try to do Xbox 2, which is a podcast I do with Jez Corden. Sometimes it's Friday, sometimes it's Saturday because, our schedules don't always kind of fit in together. So, you have to kind of look out for that. But yeah, I mean, we got November coming up, so Forza to talk about, 20th anniversary and whatever's going on there. I saw Ryan McCaffrey teasing something for tomorrow. Which I would imagine is an IGN first because it's the beginning of the month. Could he have landed Halo Infinite preview for IGN first?
Ooh,
so that might be something to look forward to tomorrow. I'm kind of interested in seeing what the VGA nominees are going to be for Game of the Year, which I think we'll get this month, right? Or in November.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things going on, and if you want to know about Xbox, like that's what I talk about on my channel. So I would love to have you drop by and check it out if it's your thing.
Do so, guys. It's an absolute blast. Every time. Did you mention where they can find you on Twitter?
Well, you see, I don't really mention Twitter because I was like, yeah, you can follow me at Twitter. But my @ is Rand _ Thor 19. It's always a mouthful to say it because Twitter doesn't allow spaces. Right. So I never really, say it. So I always just plug the YouTube thing because I don't want to always go through Rand _ So, yeah, but you can find me there. Just search Rand al Thor 19 on Twitter. I'm sure you'll find me.
Rand, thank you so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I'm sorry if anybody heard my dog. I got a big English Mastiff. He's like 4 years old, and he goes crazy when kids are around. So I was trying to mute my mic whenever he would bark, but it's Halloween, and there's kids everywhere, and he goes crazy if people come by the house. So I apologize if you guys can hear my dog.
My Shelby's downstairs barking at me to come see her because I have to go out there and join my wife as well. So I think we'll sign it off there, my friend.